We're live.
Yay!
Well, to start off, I would love to just give y'all a chance to introduce yourselves as artists and humans, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll go first. My name is Dexter Singleton. I'm the Executive Artistic Director of Collective Consciousness Theater.
And my name is Jenny Nelson, and I am the Associate Artistic Director of Collective Consciousness Theater.
It's so good to get a chance to talk to you about the role that you play in the New Haven arts community and your origin story. And I think that's where I would love to start, is just talking about how you came to be 15 years ago in New Haven, and also, why New Haven as y'all's artistic home.
Collective Consciousness started very organically. It really started to kind of form loosely as almost like a collective in the early 2000s. At the time, I came to New Haven by way of Detroit. I'm from Detroit, born and raised. And I started working at Long Wharf Theater. I did some assistant work there, interned there, worked in different departments. And that was, one of my first jobs as a professional out of school. So that was how, I'm here and how the company originally got here. And so once I left Long Wharf, I kind of, as an artist, just was kind of around and traveling and creating my own work, which I had, developed as an undergrad, and my time during Long Wharf of doing devised work, original work, taking on work that was socially conscious work, which I was always passionate about, is looking at how a play in a workshop can ultimately affect change in the community. And I was doing that type of work, from even when, I was in high school and in my undergrad years, because I always consider myself to be, in many ways, as much of an activist as I am an artist, right? And it was always important to me to see how I could roll up my sleeves and affect change in the community. So I started touring these works. And started meeting other artists that were Connecticut-based artists, ones that lived in New Haven, other cities around the state. And we started to come together as a collective out of necessity, because at the time, if I had a solo show at the time called Little Brother that I did, and it was one of our early offerings for many years, and our first few years with Collective Consciousness, and I would travel around by myself. And so I do the show, I have some cubes and a couple chairs in the car. I'd have this early 2000s. So I had all the music on a CD, and with a boom box, and that was basically it. And my costume, I traveled in the car, and I drive from city to city all around the state, throughout New England, upstate New York, and the city, Boston area, I was all over. And so then I started to meet these other artists who were also touring work, whether they be solo works or, or they were, doing other things, right, devised pieces. And we started supporting one another, because one artist may say, hey, I need someone to run my sound because I'm by myself. And when I get to the venue, I have to find a teacher or, someone else to help me run my equipment. So can you help me out there? Oh, I need somebody to help me do a small light design, or to do a little bit of this or that. Or sometimes people just needed people so that, if they had a one-person show or a two-person show, that they weren't the only ones trying to do everything, trying to make sure the venue was clean, trying to talk to someone, and try to get in that headspace to perform as well. So we just started to be support, stage manage, technical support, helping each other with contracts. And eventually what happened after we did that a couple of years, we found ourselves doing, dozens of performances. We had 6 or 7 plays at that point between us as a group. And then we started writing plays for one another after we would tour and be in hotel rooms. And we say, okay, why don't the 3 of us write a show for each other? Right. And so we would kind of write, and then we would sort of combine styles. We were very bilingual. We had a bunch of different, multilingual rather, had a bunch of different people who spoke different languages. We were very diverse as a group. So then we started to kind of look at ways that we could, utilize that in performances, and also creating workshops around that. So it was a really sort of a holistic experience approach to it, where people would see a play, there would be some sort of a pre-event, people would see a play, then they would participate in some sort of a workshop, and then you would also have offerings for people who may not be able to see the play but still wanted to tackle those important social issues. And so eventually it came to a point where we had to say, when we were, handing out cash in the parking lot, amongst each other, and that was really, it was just, just an artist hustle. And so we said, okay, look, let's try to put this under an umbrella, because, we were just charging for shows, going through the show. There was no nonprofit status or grant support or anything. It was just us hustling, just sweat equity, and just rolling up our sleeves and getting it done as artists. But once we started to do so well, we were like, maybe we can turn this into something. And there was really no plan for me to become the artistic director. It was just more so people said, oh, a lot of artists, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. You do it. You do it. So it was kind of just out of necessity was me doing it. I didn't come up with a name for the company at all. There was another artist within the collective that did that, the logo. So I can't take too much credit for some of those ideas that started us out, because it was just, the 10 or 12 of us at the time, just creating and working and, and just wanting to see change in our community. And so that's where it started. 2007, we got our nonprofit 501c3 status. And then we started to build on that and perform more in New Haven schools and more in the community, more around the state, build partnerships with nonprofits to really create, the impact, to try to make sure that impact was far reaching. And it wasn't just about doing a play and going home, but how could we provide, a whole comprehensive education for people that might be in the space or view our work. And then later on in our journey, as we went into a couple of years, then, Jenny can talk a little bit more about how she came to CCT.
That was a really good segue. We're a very good team. So I'm from Arizona, and actually in 2007 moved out here just to pursue the arts, and actually got a job pretty quickly at Regional Center for the Arts, which is where Dexter and I met, which is a magnet arts high school in Trumbull, and we both taught together for many, many years, and several of the other teachers were also part of the collective. And I actually came on as an artist to begin with, as a musician and a songwriter, and helped compose some music for one of the plays, Give Us Free, which was an educational touring play about the Amistad trials, and just kind of started working with Collective Consciousness. And I will always say it absolutely changed the course of my life to become a part of Collective Conscious, to meet Dexter. It changed the trajectory of my life in the best kind of way. And to become really rooted in activism in the arts was not really something that was being explored in my education in Arizona. And so to come out here was just such a gift, to be able to pursue this in earnest through theater, through live theater. And so I would say a couple years of being kind of artist in residence, musician, just wanting to be helpful to the organization. Dexter asked if I would come on as his associate artistic director. And of course I was thrilled, and the rest is history. We've been doing, this is, we're going into our seventh,
yeah.
Right, seventh season. And of course the pandemic has, been a pause for all of us. And we were actually in production, which Facebook is so cruel this week, showing me all the memories of things that we were doing. But we were actually in the run of Skeleton Crew when this all happened. But we are so confident that we have such a family around CCT in our community, between our artists and our designers and all of the people that come to our shows, that we will be back, and we know that they will be there, right? And because it's a relationship, it's really an authentic relationship we have with our community, and the people that have supported our work all these years. I love that Dexter really talks about where CCT came from and the hustle of it, because I think it's something that people don't talk a lot about in theater, is that there are just lean times where you are just you're with the people that believe in what you believe in, and you're doing the work, and you're making it happen. And definitely at CCT, it is such a collective. There's a reason why it is called collective consciousness, because every person, we really have to do it together. It's such a collaborative. And so it's such a special place. And I think it's because the origins of it have never gone away, right? Those value systems is still there from the beginning, that it's a collective of people coming together to make art for social change. That has never changed with CCT. We have always been driven by that mission. So.
And it's always, you know, the whole time as we've all evolved, you know, you have artists who, you know, were part of the group and then left and went off and did their own thing, you know, some who stayed in the industry, others who went on and did other, you know, fabulous things in other ways. You know, but our core of artists, like Jenny said, it's the family. And so many times we've all, you know, in this time, all of us have found our own individual successes within the industry. You know, you can go off and somebody's doing a TV thing or they're doing a movie and then they come back and work at CCT, you know, for very little money, for candy money, right? In some ways. And they do it because it's family, right? And we love each other. And we know that, you know, the type of work that we want to do and the way that we want the production to look and the impact that we want it to have, we can do that at CCT. And we know that if we're working for somebody else, if someone's doing a movie or a TV show, or they're working for a regional theater, you don't always have that power and that input. And we know at CCT, and we got that relationship where we've been working together so long, you know how that is, right? Is you got a look or a glance or a word that we've known each other so long that we just know, right, how to work with each other. And that's our family and that's our home base. And so that's been exciting as well, to see how successful people have been individually, right, across the country and different parts, you know, of the state. And then they always come back, no matter what that is, and bring that back to CCT. And so we've evolved and we just changed with the times. And like any theater company, you know, you try to be nimble. We, you know, went from a phase where we were doing mostly education work, and then we went into a phase where we started producing. And that's the 7 seasons have been, you know, doing productions, a season of productions of 2 or 3 productions for these 7 years. You know, just always finding ways to just kind of shift ourselves and keep it alive, you know. And there's been times where there's lean years and times where we kind of go, okay, we can only do a little bit this year, but we do what we can. And we make sure, even if we don't have, you know, any money at all, that whatever we do is still going to be impactful and it's going to be full of heart.
Thank you so much. I'm very struck in listening to you talk about collective consciousness as a family, and a family grounded in values, and that the values of arts as activism, arts as organizing have been a part of CCT from the beginning. I'd love to, in thinking about family, think about ancestors and who are the artists, organizers, legacies that you draw on as a company, and the ancestors that inspired you at the beginning and continue to inspire you.
Well, I mean, for us, you know, in our early work, you know, which we took a lot from history. And so, you know, historically, I mean, drawing on the words of civil rights activists who have come throughout time, you know, from the Fannie Lou Hamers to the Shirley Chisholms, you know, Dr. King, Harriet Tubman, you know, all those different type, Crispus Attucks, you know. And so we've drawn a lot, you know, on the words and the stories of those individuals, and always looking at ourselves and saying, you know, how can we make a small impact? Because socially conscious theater, right, or activism can seem very overwhelming, right? It can seem like you do something and then you don't see much change sometimes, right, with what you can see, or because of how social media is and the good and bad of the internet, that you can often feel like you're, you know, that you're not gaining enough momentum or you're not changing enough quickly enough. And so we just always try to focus on, you know, one person at a time, and say, if we come here and we just help, you know, one person grow, or one person change, or one person learn or get educated, or use what they take from the show to do something else, then we've done our job. But we can never expect that more than one individual at a time can be moved. And if it's hundreds at a time, then that's great. But we just want to stay consistent in the work and keep going with the work. And always people know that when you see or hear about collective consciousness, that is based in this value system. We are building on the legacies of our ancestors and those activists and those artists that came before us and those current ones, and using that energy to really propel us into the world that we want to, the change in the world that we want to see.
I think something that I think about a lot is the way that theater, I have a mentor, Nisi Aya, who says that theater is the place where we can practice the future that we want to live in. And that is what makes it distinct from other kinds of art forms, is that you can actually imagine the future you want to live in and then live it out and practice it. And I'm curious how that idea resonates with you in your work and what kind of future you feel like you're practicing at Collective Consciousness.
Jenny?
I think I'll come from my own experience, but I know Dexter and I align in this, that we've seen change happen in the room at CCT. And that really, we have bared witness to people having a real moment of clarity when it comes to systemic racism, and all types of audiences. I think we have one of the most diverse audiences in Connecticut, this side of the country. It's all in between. And so when people come to a CCT show, they are having this collective experience together, and reacting together to what is happening in the art. And to be able to actually see the future happening in the room, that this person is leaving now and they are thinking something they never thought before. Mm-hmm. And they might actually be motivated and activated now to go be the change, right? Which has been our motto for a long time. That just keeps me going. I know, and I'm sure it keeps you going, Dexter, too, that because it can feel so slow, like you were talking about before, Dexter, right? We don't see it. You put out this work and sometimes you just don't know if it's really resonating with people. I think because we've been able to have the agency to pick the plays that we know we want to do, that people need to see in our community, that they might not see anywhere else, right? We've been doing Dominique Morisseau plays before a lot of people were doing them, right? Being a Detroit native, Dexter had that connection, and we were so fortunate to be able to start doing her plays early on. And I think that gets me excited for the future. That's why I see the future in our art, because what we're talking about is coming from living, breathing playwrights happening right now in these communities. And we're able to give it to our community and start to really have that dialogue. We always do, post-show discussions, and our post-show discussions can be lively and not just the how do you memorize all those lines, which is a great question. And actors are happy to answer it. But I really love some of our post-show discussions too, because that is also where I see the future, as you put it, because people are really starting to question. And we always say at CCT, we're not going to answer anything for you, but you're going to leave asking questions, right? And that's what we want. That's what propels the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought up Dominique Morisseau, because I'm really struck in looking at the playwrights that y'all have produced and the stories that you've told on your stage, the imaginations that I'm sure have shaped you as a company. And so thinking about writers like Dominique and Jackie Sibley's Drury and Katori Hall, really thinking about the voices of Black women and their imaginations, I'm curious to know more specifically about how you feel that those stories have impacted you and what it's been like to live inside of those stories on your stage.
Well, one of the things that we decided early on, once we wanted to produce a season, is we said, okay, what can we know? We knew at Collective Consciousness, obviously we cannot pay anybody, even what they were getting, at a LORT theater or a much bigger theater. So we knew we needed to make up for that, in hospitality, right? And how we treated the artists, and making sure that we were giving them things and ways to impact the community that they weren't going to get that other places. And that's one thing people always say is that, when artists work for us for the first time outside of our circle of artists that we work with consistently, they always say, I want to come back because I feel respected, I feel valued, I feel like my voice matters. And so we would go to playwrights, we always have, but early on, to try to, get those playwrights to, give us their blessing and give us, the rights to a play, is we would go right to them. And so we would sit down, go into New York, meet with folks. I've sat down with Dominique many years ago when we first produced Detroit 67. It had only had, I think, 2 productions at that point. A theater in Chicago had done it and the Public had done it. And someone had said to me, oh, there's this writer who just did their show at the Public Studio, when they have Public Studio, the $10 tickets there, and would do 2 or 3 shows many years ago. And so you got to see this writer, part of the emerging writers group, and she's phenomenal. And so we met at Great Jones Cafe right around the corner from the Public and chopped it up for about 3 hours. And I said, Dom, what, I'm from Detroit just like you, what do you want to see this play do in the community? And she told me, and I said, okay, if we can do this play, if we can get the rights to this play, because the play at that point, I don't even know if it was even publicly published at that point.
Yeah, we had the rough draft script.
Yeah. And so we did it, right? And so Dom hooked all that up for us, and gave us the rights. We spoke directly to her agent to get the rights to the play. And she gave us our blessing. She came down, was a part of our post-show discussion, and very lively discussion. And when we produced the play, it was at the time where I think the opening weekend, the grand jury for the Michael Brown killing had just reported back that there were going to be no charges against the officer. And so it's kind of also, these shows fell at times sometimes where the writer was feeling a particular way, the content of the piece, and then you have in that play where the character Sly is killed by the police, right, in that play. And so that was a big part of the post-show discussions and those conversations. And so, really trying to get that, that resonance with the community that the playwright wants to see. And that's a big thing to them, because they'll say, I never got this at other place. I never got this at such and such theater. And they don't care about my voice, so they won't give me these opportunities, but y'all do it. And that way we can see it. And because our audiences are so diverse, people know, you come to our theater, you might see, a young person of color, a teen sitting next to an elderly, a white person sitting next to and we've got all types of people that come to our theater. We have, who's who of New Haven, ADs, writers, different folks who are very well known, alongside people who are just community people, students, all types of people. And that's what people love about it. They come there, they say, I'm going to see more diverse audiences. I'm going to see a show that I feel like is just as strong as what I would see at any other theater in town. I'm going to meet people. I'm going to, I can talk to people in the lobby. The actors and the company are accessible. The writer is accessible if they're there. And so it just creates this really, this living room style environment, in a space that's not much bigger than a living room, right? And so people just feel, welcome. And that's part of the environment that we set. And that's the tradition that we've kept. And it's allowed us to really have a really great artistic growth and really great reach, because it just happens so organically. And it's what people really want to see. And we knew early on, too, that the plays that we were going to bring to New Haven, the Katori Halls, like you said, Jackie Sibber's Drury, the Idris Goodwins, Dom, that these were plays that at the time nobody else was producing. So, so almost every time we put a show up, it was a regional premiere, or it was an East Coast premiere, right? Almost every single time, and definitely a Connecticut premiere, because almost every show we've done has never played in Connecticut. Either. And so people were going to see shows that they knew that they also weren't going to see anywhere else. And that was really important to them, or they were going to see a totally different spin on a show like that. And so now we get it to the point where, even though we're still so small, we did Passover, and somebody had tweeted or somebody had posted about on Instagram, oh, I just saw the controversial Passover, right? And then the playwright, of course, right, Antoinette, was
Awesome.
following, she was following the show, right? And we all reach out to every one of them. She couldn't make it, but she was following closely. And she responded and said, well, what do you find about the show that's controversial? Right? And so and then he answered, and then she broke it down to him. You thought it was controversial as a white man because of blah, 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 blah. Right. Broke it down on Instagram for him. And then at the end, shout out to CCT for doing the show. Good luck on your next weekend. And that was great. We met Susan Laurie Parks. We were doing Top Dog Underdog, and ran into her, actually just ran into her in New York, told her about the show and blah, blah, blah. So we've just been getting so much love from writers because we're doing so much unique things. And that's been the most beautiful thing, that a small company, a grassroots company that has no money can actually build a community and connect with people. And, and we've been able to cultivate those relationships, during this whole time, of our existence.
I think it takes the time too, right, Dexter? Like when we started, when you're doing a play that no one's heard of, or very few have heard of, with, deep, subject matter, right, that gets to the core, to the heart, with a name that maybe isn't, right, going to be marketable, right, with, all these different things, that barriers, right, these invisible barriers we put up. Our audience, it took 7 years to build this audience for our small house, right? It took that time, and I think that's something to keep in mind with all theaters as we're making, I see we all see this change in the last year in the pause, everyone leaning in, to the BIPOC demands, and how can we shift and change and dismantle systemic racism in our theatrical institutions. But that's not going to happen all at once, right? We can make some changes right away and absolutely see the benefit of that. But I think we have to build relationships, right? People have to trust you, and that just doesn't happen overnight, right? You have to really consistently say to people, this is what we're about. You are safe here. You are welcome here. This is what we're going to be consistently telling you. We're not going to change this. You have a seat at the table with us, and there's an urgency right now that I love. I hope we don't lose that momentum, which is very much our MO. But that it takes time, that you really have to build authentic relationships with your base, with your community, so that they will keep coming back. Now I think we're word of mouth. Now I think people are like, whatever CCT is doing, I'm going to go see it. But that took time. That took a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of shows where, we weren't sure, are people going to show up, and they always did. But that makes me really proud. That makes me feel a deep sense of pride that between this team, right, this collective, that our community, we spoke to the community, and the community responded and said, we like what we see ourselves up there. We want more of this. So
I think what you're saying about creating a space that is truly welcoming and where people are empowered to have an impact on the work and collaborate in the work, it's so crucial, and is, of course, a part of how we make our art a more just space for everyone. And I'm curious to know, Dexter, you described the love that you feel from writers that have collaborated with CCT and artists that come back because they know that this is a place where they're going to be respected and they're going to be able to bring their whole selves. What are some of the concrete practices that y'all use as a company in collaboration to intentionally foster that for your artists?
Well, we always let artists know that it's a safe space, right? And one where we aren't going to be exploitive. We aren't going to be use abusive practices or use ones to try to manipulate people. And folks know that from the beginning, that you have a voice in how we set the room, how we hire directors. Any director that works for us, or any artist in general that works for us, has to be one that is socially conscious, right? That is aware of what's happening in the world. They're not looking at it, hopefully from a bigoted lens. Those artists who are white artists, we want them to all recognize their privilege and recognize, what they can do to help better the world, and not put that on Black and brown bodies to do the work, but that they have to do the work themselves. And so those are some things from my point of view that we, just one of, some of many things that we're doing, for people, is just to making sure, that it's safe and you can talk about it. And we do the work in terms of also making sure that when we tackle this subject matter really early on in our time, we didn't want to be just a bunch of artists talking about a social issue that maybe we didn't know that much about. So we always involve experts in the fields of the plays that we're working on. So any subject matter, we are going to engage, people from our community, nonprofits, workers, people who are rolling up their sleeves and a part of that field. And so that we make sure, and we can have questions, and we can have those questions answered, have that platform, bring those individuals in, so that we can make sure that we're not giving incorrect information. Because also with social change, we know that you could also be opening up wounds, right, or traumas for people. And not a lot of companies are always aware of that. They put this traumatic stuff on stage, and then folks leave in worse shape than they were when they entered, or they were surprised and not knowing, oh my God, this is what this play is. It's messing me up, right? And so we always wanted to make sure that that we were, handling that well, handling that with care and love, and then making sure that through the talkbacks, any workshops that we're doing, any community events, that those always have professionals from those fields with them. And then we also provide resources with every production for patrons, individuals, artists to then be able to follow up and do their own. If they want to get involved with a nonprofit, if they want to, take a training, or if they want to do, this or that can make them more socially conscious, we provide those ways for them to be able to roll up their sleeves and use whatever gifts or influence they have to be able to affect change themselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, he said it all. That was good.
I know. Yeah, that was really thorough, and I think speaks to the importance of thinking about who we hold and how we hold at every stage. So thinking about the artists in the room, but also, as you said, our audiences and how we're inviting them in and then taking care of them. So thank you. That was awesome to hear. Well, I would love to talk a little bit now about what you have going on at the moment. I know that y'all have an upcoming project in collaboration with New Haven Women and Girls, and that you're collaborating virtually during this pandemic, and that comes with all kinds of challenges. So I'd just love to hear about that project.
Yeah, we're so excited to be back. It has been a year almost, basically, since we were in our theater. And so bringing back this virtual event on March 20th is really exciting, and with young people, which is where we started, right? With education and young people. And so this project, the idea of this project began a couple of years ago, that I've just always want to see more intergenerational work between elders and young people. I think there's just such a wealth of learning and experience between these two ages. And so this project that this show will be having on the 20th is kind of a culmination of an idea where we interviewed elders in our community about their voting experience. And these are Black women. And so we interviewed these women about, all their different voting experiences. And then we had young artists interpret those interviews with an artistic response. So they got all of the interviews of the elders, and then they decided based on their art form, kind of what response. So we have visual artists, we have dancers, we have theater practitioners, we have everywhere in between, and they're going to be responding to these amazing interviews with these elders. And our board member, Ife, Michelle Garden, she is the project manager for this, and a big shout out to her. She's been doing such a fantastic job leading us through this project. And it's really going to be a wonderful culmination and a great place for us to start. And when we came to this idea, this was in 2017, 18. I mean, so we were definitely in the midst of our past presidency, but having no idea how voting would completely, as it always is, important. Every election is important, but this one specifically really changed the trajectory of our country, and activating, that people activated and voted. And so we're hoping that it also inspires people to keep talking, activate yourself, vote, because one of the statistics that kind of led me to this project was that typically women over 70 and young women between 18 and 25, they drop off in their voting. And so the idea was for them to inspire each other to get out there and vote. And if you're feeling disenfranchised from voting, explore that, right? What are other ways you can feel active in your community? So yeah, so it's going to be a really great event, and it's going to be a kickoff for us, hopefully starting to come back. Theater wants to come back. So it'll be great.
Can we see it? How can we see it?
So if you go to there on our Facebook page, there is an Eventbrite, and you can sign up for that. It is a free event. And so you can sign up for the link, and you'll receive the Zoom link the day before, the Vimeo link, and then you'll be able to watch it at 7:00 on March 20th.
Awesome. I'm very much looking forward to it. And as somebody who's also very passionate about intergenerational collaboration, I'm just so stoked to see that.
Right on. We should talk.
We should definitely talk.
Yes, so many ideas.
Well, I wanted to just, I guess, as we're nearing the end of our conversation, ask if there's anything that you wish I would have asked about that you would like to talk about in our remaining time.
No, I think this has been great. I want to encourage, anybody who views this, or anybody who is thinking about live performance and how it's going to change, or what it's going to be when we are post-pandemic. And as an artist, just like we all do, is that it's been tough. It's been tough in our industry. We have seen some artists who have thrived and who have continued to work and found their niche in this pandemic. But we've also seen, thousands and thousands of artists who've been without work, and some of the greatest artists of our generation that have been without work for an entire year. And so I want to encourage people to support artists as much as possible, as much as they possibly can. If they can support them now for future works that they might have once the pandemic is over, but certainly if they're able to be in person at the theater, to go and support the theater, to purchase, an artist's music or their paintings or their pieces of art in any kind of way, and support art, because still in our American society, we need to care more about art. And I think there seems to be some kind of a disconnect, because people don't think about when they watch Netflix, or they go and they listen to Beyonce, or they go to a J. Cole concert, or Rihanna, they don't think about that those are artists as well. There's that disconnect still, that, Beyonce is an actual artist. Oh, Beyonce took a dance class, or, had to start somewhere, right? And that there will be no Netflix, right, without artists, right? There will be, no Beyonce without, without dance classes, or without music classes, or those community things. And so people supporting the arts, throughout our community, at all levels. And that you never know in your community, by supporting a young person, that they might be the next, next big thing that really shapes or influences you, your children, your family, with their art. And artists are going to need it more than ever. and that we as artists come back, you know, and we know there's going to be a lot of work that's going to come out of people's responses to the pandemic. And you know, but we need that support moving forward. And our industry needs that support, and we'll bounce back because we always do.
We always do.
And it's going to take a long time, but we will. But we'll need the support of people, you know, more than ever.
Well, speaking of, what are the ways that people can best support the work that Collective Consciousness is doing right now?
Well, you know, we're always open to anyone who wants to give a donation to the company, which you can do through our website, you know, collectiveconsciousnesstheater.org, right there on the home page. Also through our Facebook page. You know, like I said, we're going to be active, you know, with this project next week. And then as soon as we can come back and present something live, we'll be back with that. So, you know, buy a ticket, come and check it out. Again, we're one of the most affordable theaters for the quality of theater that you'll see. You know, $25 tickets for adults, $10 tickets for students. And every Thursday is pay what you can night. And so whether you can pay $1 or $100, you can come and check out a production. And so, you know, those are some ways that people can support us.
And I would just love to, just as you know, New Haven is one of the greatest cities in Connecticut on the East Coast, and there are so many tremendous artists that we have had such a privilege to work with, that we continue to work with. And when you're thinking of giving, right, to these organizations, look to New Haven, right? Look to supporting within and local artists. It can make such a huge difference to give a little to a local artist that can really keep them going. A lot of people have left the field of theater entirely because of this pandemic, understandably. And so by you giving of your time, promoting them, giving a gift, supporting a local artist right now could not be more important for the arts to thrive, because arts are essential. We have leaned into the arts this year. It is what has kept us going, right? When you're talking about Netflix, Dexter, and Spotify and all the things, you know, Audible, all the things I've been doing to just try and keep my mind occupied and to feel connected to our community, nothing does that better than the arts. And we are so fortunate to be in the arts, and that I really think of us thinking of it more being essential than extra, right? It's an essential need in our lives to thrive as human beings. And so just much love to New Haven and everyone in it. That is our family and our base, and we cannot wait to come back and do live theater.
Amen to that. And thank you both and the whole collective for all of the work that you've done to uplift our New Haven community and bring amazing stories into the community. And I'm just so grateful to talk with you and to have this time together. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. It was so great to get to talk with both of you.